Today on the DML News Podcast, we've got a major hurricane, and I mean major. It's called Milton, and it's coming for us here in Florida. We're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking about how the government has absolutely botched, and I mean botched, the recovery effort in North Carolina. They're being completely exposed, and yet they cry they're the victims, and they want to blame Republicans. And then lastly, Trump makes an appearance back in Butler, Pennsylvania, and he has Elon Musk in tow, and apparently this was a event of a lifetime. We'll be talking about this and so much more, so get ready. It's Monday. We're all together here safely, and we're all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today on this Monday. On the controls is my son Ryan. Across from me is my son Denny. We are family. We are together with you here. If you are Team DML, we appreciate you. As always, our members, well, they keep us around. If you're not a member yet, we ask you to consider it, especially with what's going on these days with all the censorship and Google and Facebook and everybody else basically turning off our advertising. If it wasn't for our members, we would not be in business. So if you want to consider being a member, go to teamdml.com. That's teamdml.com. Sign up for a membership. We run a special every year that it's an election year, and you could come on as a member for $30 for an entire year. It usually costs $200. Of course, this ends when the election is over. So please consider becoming a member. You could also download the DML News app for free from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, and you can sign up from tab 5, the Interact tab. You know, I've been in this business, news and media, politics. It's been going now. I think I started in about 2006, really dove in heavy 2008, making my first immigration film. And the amount of information that I was fed once I opened up my eyes, once I started to look at things a little different, once I started to go past the headlines and realize the fact that the mainstream media, which I never used to call mainstream media before I got into all of this, it was just turn on the news and we'd watch Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 7, Channel 5 back in my day before cable and all the proliferation of all the internet stuff and how you could get everything in nanoseconds from X.com or Facebook, whatever. I mean, if you're listening to this, you probably know what I'm talking about. You had a remote, or even before the remote, you had the little dial and you'd get CBS, NBC, ABC. And then later on, they introduced Fox. But before Fox came on, you had ABC, NBC, CBS. I didn't know that that was the mainstream media. I just thought that that was the news. And it was amazing because when I decided to make They Come to America, which I completely fell into, I had no education about immigration. I had nobody that I knew that lived along the border. I was completely disconnected from the whole entire thing. I got introduced to it by seeing a guy not far from my home standing on a corner holding a sign saying deport illegals. And every day, whether it was 100 degrees or 20 degrees, whether it was raining, snowing, or the sun was boiling on top of him, he stood there with that sign. Sometimes people would throw coffee at him. Other times people would honk in encouragement. Finally, one day, I pulled over, spoke to him, and decided I was going to make a film on this topic that I knew nothing about. And when I started doing my research, when I went to the ABC, CBS, NBC sort of storylines that I had been introduced to for my whole life, because that's all I knew, I started to recognize that I was being lied to. Because I was told that it was the big bad American who didn't understand the plight of the illegal alien. And when I started to go around the country, I saw that the border was not secure. I saw that people were losing their jobs because they didn't speak English. Because they didn't speak Spanish. And they had to speak Spanish because, especially here in Florida, all the newcomers were coming in and they didn't speak English. So people who had banking resumes, 20, 25 years deep, because of the surge that was coming in from Barack Obama and the surge that had come in from George Bush, these people were losing their jobs because they weren't bilingual. And I never saw these stories on the mainstream media. And the reason why I bring that up today is because when you look at the mainstream media today, it hasn't changed one iota. The difference is that now we have other outlets. We have other forms of information. We're starting to see that there's different storylines than the one we've been fed forever. Think about this for one moment, and I'm seriously asking you to think about this. If we didn't have things like Twitter and Facebook, if we didn't have things like alternative media, like the DML News app and Breitbart and things of that nature, you'd still be told that the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, was a real thing, that it didn't start in a Wuhan lab. You'd be lied to about everything. You think you'd know what was going on about Butler, Pennsylvania, and how the president was shot in the head? Do you think you'd know anything about anything? The only thing you would know is the storyline they want to give you. I take you right now to North Carolina, and I want you to think about all the videos and all the news reports that you've heard. If you just had CBS, ABC, and NBC, if it was back in the old world, if you just went based on the narratives that you're getting today from those places, you would think that FEMA and Kamala Harris and the entire White House was doing everything they possibly could to save the people who are still stranded 10 days after the most bizarre hurricane, and I say bizarre hurricane, to ever hit the United States has hit. Now, there are stories coming from various different people that are saying that there's a need for 500 body bags. There's stories coming that say rescue crews are being told by the federal government that you can't go up and save somebody. Everybody by now has heard the story about the helicopter pilot and his son who were trying to save people, only to be told that if they did it again, if they saved anybody, they would be arrested. If we didn't have Twitter or X, we didn't have alternative media, we wouldn't know these stories. So think about how many things that you've been lied to in your life. I think the number is endless. If we all sat here and started to go over all the different stories that we were told to believe before the proliferation of the internet, cable news, and social media, we've been walking around like robots. Seriously, like robots. But because we have alternative media, we are starting to now learn how bad these lies are. If you go on X and you just type in Hurricane Helene, the videos and the stories that you will hear are heartbreaking. I mean, just before Ryan hit the go live button, I was just looking at a video that was just posted within the last day or two. There's one woman who is still wearing the same clothing she was in from when the time that the hurricane hit. She has no money. She has no credit card. She has no way to get gas for her car. She has no way to get food. Everything in her life has been stripped from her. And meanwhile, Kamala Harris is out doing interviews on podcasts. What's it called? Call Her Daddy? Call Her Daddy. I'm going to put this into perspective for you. And I ask for your forgiveness for me even bringing this up. But I want to put it into perspective. Kamala Harris, who would not give anybody a sit-down interview for months, is now going around and doing these very favorable, I will be friendly to you interviews. And she decides to go on a podcast called Call Her Daddy, which 2 episodes prior to Kamala Harris being on that show, dedicated the majority of its show to talk about oral sex. And they didn't use the word oral sex. They used the words blow, you got it. This is where Kamala Harris is finding refuge. And we're supposed to believe somehow, some way, that the federal government is going in and doing what they're supposed to be doing to help victims. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. And I'll tell you why I don't believe it. It's very simple. I don't believe it because if FEMA was rescuing people, if FEMA was doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, you'd be seeing the videos. There's nothing more than that Kamala Harris would love than to be able to show you videos of how she's saving people on mountaintops and about how people are getting recovery like nothing you've ever seen before. There are no videos. There are no stories to tell because FEMA is doing nothing. FEMA has spent an incredible amount of money on trying to make it so this way illegal aliens are comfortable in this country. So this way, cities around the country can get all the assistance they need to help with the newcomers, the new Americans. You know the ones I'm talking about, the ones that don't speak English and the ones that don't pay taxes. That's where FEMA's money has gone. And now the new narrative is that, well, the big bad Republicans are causing all of this to happen. That's why FEMA's out of money. We're out of money. Baloney. We just signed a continuing resolution, a CR as it's known. We are always signing CRs because nobody could get a budget correctly. Mike Johnson, although I'm not crazy with a lot of what he does, has come out and said, we don't need to get Congress back in here. We don't need to get emergency this and emergency that for FEMA. We already did it. The top line of the CR says that FEMA will have access to $20 billion from now until December 20. It has the money. It doesn't have the will. Now, I'll take you away from North Carolina for a second to that strange storm that somehow found its way hundreds of miles off the coast where hurricanes usually hit. Now I'm going to take you to the Gulf of Mexico. Now, I'll have Ryan change the screenshot here for a second. I'm pointing, for those of you who are listening, I'm pointing to the country of Mexico and to the west side of Gulf of Mexico, where a hurricane named Milton suddenly came out of nowhere. I am 55 years old. I have lived on Long Island and now in Florida, nowhere else. On Long Island, we completely understand about inclement weather. We've had our share of hurricanes. I have lived through those hurricanes. They have been devastating in many different ways. My father lost his entire community in Hurricane Sandy. If you've watched any of my films, if you watch They Come to America 2, I believe, I actually take you to the area known as Breezy, and it's gone. Breezy Point is gone. I show it to you. It looks like something you would expect in the Middle East after a major bombing. Hurricane Gloria. I could sit here and name them. Even with Florida. Hurricanes always seem to be coming out of Africa and the Caribbean, and they wind up working their way up, and either you get hit on the left side or the right side or west side or east side, depending on how you want to talk about it. You always get hit in Florida first, either on the west or in the east, or periodically that hurricane will miss Florida because it will bend more to the right, and then it's on direct angle for the Carolinas or New York or from Maine, and then it blows out to sea. In 55 years, I have never, ever seen a hurricane form on the far western side of the Gulf of Mexico. And as of right now, and there will be a new update at 11. We're starting a little early today because I have other things I have to do to get ready for the hurricane. At 11 o'clock, you'll get an update from the National Weather Service. But the last one that we just got a couple hours ago say that the hurricane right now is a Category 4, headed towards a Category 5. And many estimates and projections right now say that this may be the most catastrophic hurricane in modern day. How is this happening? For the entire part of my career, I have always, and anybody who's been with me a long time knows this, I have always criticized those people who I have considered to be conspiracy theorists. I always consider myself a realist. But I have to tell you something. I go back to two things that have happened in the last few years that I can't erase from my brain. The United States of America funded the Wuhan lab and did everything it possibly could to try to make it so this way we didn't think they did. They lied to us, and nobody has paid for that lie except for the people who lost their lives during COVID, except for our children who still today are all fucked up because of what we did to them during COVID. The second thing I can't get my head away from is the fact that we had a Chinese spy balloon fly over our country. Nobody did a single damn thing in the Biden-Harris administration. Nothing. We let a foreign adversary, the country that wants us gone the most, the country that owns so much of our land, owns all of our debt, we allowed them to fly over our country and take real-time video and God knows what else. So when I sit here and I hear people saying the weather's being manipulated, before the Biden administration, before the Harris administration, I would have said, what? But now I totally 110% believe it. Why? Because the government has lied to you and has lied to me so many times I can't even count. Ryan is going to play a video right now. It dates back 9 years ago. 9 years. And it talks about weather manipulation. Listen to what they say.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion, though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really, to change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those...
So the reason why we played this for you and the reason why I started the whole beginning of the conversation about what I've experienced over the course of time, in real time, I've seen it with my own two eyes. I saw how it is the government lied to us about immigration and illegal immigration. I watched it. I watched how the media lied. I'm telling you, when I first did my first movie, I was like, I spent so much time and money chasing things that didn't exist, storylines that didn't exist, that were told to me from ABC, CBS, NBC, the mainstream media, who plays basically propaganda for the White House. So when I sit here and tell you that we need to start looking at things a lot differently than the way that it is that the White House and the media wants us to look at it, I mean it. I'm going to pull Dennis in here. Dennis, this video that you actually sent to me about the manipulation of weather 9 years ago, guy says, yeah, well, it's proven to work. China obviously used it during the Olympics. What do we know about this?
Yeah, I mean, Sam was actually the one to send me that video, and just watching it, if that is from 9 years back, it has to make you question, okay, well, what can they do now? And that is just with lasers. I mean, one of the big things, Ryan and I did a very giant report on it a few months back, is cloud seeding, which Saudi Arabia does a lot. And with cloud seeding, you're basically dropping in from planes different substances that can either almost kill or enhance storm weather, particularly rain. I think it's silver iodide, dry ice, and salt. If you do the right combination of that dropped in to a storm that's formulating, you can severely enhance it with the amount of rainfall you get. Now, I'm kind of in the belief, too, that there is manipulation going on here. And the truth is, we've had this kind of technology for a very long time. Even in the Vietnam War, they attempted to use cloud seeding to create monsoons to deviate the troop movements that were going through the jungles in Vietnam. So we've had this technology, honestly, for about 90 years. Now, the question becomes, how efficient and how improved has that technology become over time? And the question is, what are we using it for? Now, what pisses me off is that if they're using it to enhance these things, that raises big questions. And if they have the means to actually dilute these storms, why aren't they using that technology to do so? Even Maui comes with very big questions. There were certain parts of Lahaina that didn't get hit, and yet other areas got absolutely devastated by those fires. And, in my opinion, and I think you share this too, every life is valuable. I unfortunately don't think the government views it that way. I think they view what land is valuable. And I don't want to go too far into what maybe people say is the conspiracy rabbit hole. But even when you look at the areas that get damaged in North Carolina and Tennessee, there's lithium deposit mines that companies like BlackRock have been trying to get their hands on for a while, buying up that land, and residents saying, no, I'm a lifelong 100-year plus resident. I'm not looking to sell my land. So when you kind of start mixing all these things together, and then the big, the big line here is we can't trust our government with all the lies that they've spewed on various topics over the course of time. It makes you kind of start to deviate towards okay, something isn't making a lot of sense about these two last hurricanes that we've had.
Yeah, I mean, right here, this is yesterday, right? Kamala Harris says everyone is thankful for how the Biden-Harris administration has handled the Hurricane Helene disaster. The statement comes as the admin is accused of obstructing rescue efforts. Reporter, what did you hear about the administration's response today? Harris, I heard lots of thanks for the work we are doing, and folks on the ground are really appreciative of the work we've been doing, particularly FEMA. Now, let me tell you this. I have on the weekend been on both Facebook and on X, and may God strike me down if I'm lying. I have not seen one video at all to where somebody in North Carolina or Georgia or any of these places that were hit, but specifically North Carolina where it's really bad, not one person has put the camera at their face and said, thank you. The response has been amazing. You people have saved lives. Thank you, thank you. Let me tell you the story about how FEMA came up and rescued my husband. I've seen it just the opposite.
Yeah.
I've seen it just the opposite.
And look, I hate to be so negative here, but this is something my gut's telling me. I don't foresee a swift or even a definite recovery in those areas. I mean, I just mentioned Maui. My buddy who was there in Hawaii just 2 weeks ago said that the area is still devastated and it's not going to recover. So my prediction here is when you have those Appalachian towns that have been wiped out, I don't think they are going to recover. I think those people are going to get displaced. And don't be shocked if the federal government comes in, swoops in, and just literally buys up or occupies that land. I mean, it's what's going to happen. And when you have those lithium deposits that are essential for the batteries that they want to make for their, phones and other technologies, it kind of just all sort of makes sense. I mean, think of our government, right? And I think you could answer this question. Do you think the government cares more about getting their hands on things that can benefit their technologies or helping the people out that have been devastated by this storm?
Oh, I'll take you back to something that I would have never talked like this until this started to happen. One of the things that we will do, interestingly, after the election is over, some of the things about this podcast and even the way we put out programming is going to change. But we're waiting to see the election and the election results to see how far we could go one way or the other. If Kamala Harris wins, we'll give limited because we'll be trying to save every penny we have. If Trump's in, we'll go full throttle. We did an RV tour, and we wound up finding ourselves by mistake in a town called Pritchard. It's Pritchard, right?
Mhm.
Pritchard, Oklahoma?
Mm-hmm. Picture.
Pritchard, Oklahoma. Pritchard, Oklahoma, out of nowhere, the government comes in and says, oh, by the way, your ground is contaminated. We will buy you out of all your homes. You can't live here anymore. And then people started pushing back. What are you talking about? They didn't want to leave. This is where they've been. What do you mean? Why can't we decontaminate? Why can't we get rid of the soils? Whatever. FEMA goes in there. They're getting pushed back from the locals. And what winds up happening? A tornado comes through and rips out that very, very, very city, and it's gone. There's nobody there. We did the one interview with the one person who's still living there. And what did we see the whole time we were there? Government trucks moving around soil, recreating the whole 9 yards. And the guy says, yeah, the government bought the entire plot, the entire town, and paid everybody to get them out of here. Paid them very little money, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a report here. because you could make the argument for BlackRock and the lithium. You could make arguments for BlackRock wanting to buy property because right now I think they own 60% of the country in terms of where people could live. But there's also an election coming up. Here's a report out of Colin Rugg. 40,000 absentee ballots were mailed to voters in the North Carolina counties that were declared a disaster zone from Helene, with less than 1,000 of those 40,000 being returned. Trump won North Carolina by about 70,000 votes in 2020, meaning the hurricane could have a real impact on the election. Now, both states, North Carolina and Georgia, face crucial decisions in the next few days about how to help register and vote after massive flooding ripped away roads, shuttered towns, and dispersed residents. Politico, far-left Politico reported. Those include whether to extend next week's voter registration deadlines, grant more time for voters to cast absentee ballots, and set up new polling places in areas where floods destroyed roads. Now, you tell me, if you just lost everything, including maybe a loved one, and you got the same clothes on your back that you did 10 days ago, you're struggling to find water or food. Maybe you're still trapped up in a mountain. Nobody has come to get you yet. I can tell you the last thing on your mind is, how am I going to cast my ballot for Trump?
Right. Look, and that's the thing too, I think, that needs to be kind of harped in here. I think with the manipulation and the modification, for example, right, I don't believe our government can create a hurricane in Arizona. The conditions don't allow it. It's an arid desert. But when you are in an area such as Florida, the Carolinas, and this region in the Gulf, I mean, as you pointed out, there is a lot of suspicion here as to where it formed in the first place. That is not typical of where hurricanes form in that area. It's also in an airspace zone that would be a little bit hard for any American possibly looking out to see what's going on to actually catch anything. But I think what happens is they find a little storm with the right conditions. They send in their planes. They do the cloud seeding. They expand it. And that trajectory, I mean, with Milton here, it is going to hit Florida hard, like a punch to the face. So I am worried about those on the West Coast and even, us on the East Coast getting that lasting impact as it travels across the state. So, and look, Oklahoma, right?
Hold on. Okay, before you go into that, let me just show something on this map. So if you look at the trajectory of this hurricane and where it's looking to hit, one of the most populated areas in Florida is southern Florida on the east side. It's where you have Fort Lauderdale. It's where you have Miami. You have Aventura. If you were to come to me and say, DML, what part of Florida would you say has the biggest lefty population?
Oh, yeah.
I'd pick the one part of where the hurricane isn't supposed to nail.
Yeah.
Okay? You want to talk about the most conservative areas? It's where we live. Where we live is completely conservative. Indian River County. It's not even a contest. Same thing. You've got so many different conservative areas on the west coast of Florida. And everything that this hurricane's path is going to just destroy so many of those areas. You're going to have 2 weeks, 3 weeks left before an election, and you're going to have a majority of people being able to vote in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. When you go back and you look at Parkland, that shooting happened because far left idiots were running that school district. All right, far left Obama freaking robots. That's what you're talking about being out of harm's way. And all the keys, and the majority of the keys is all liberal. Yeah. So there you go. Meanwhile, how many people aren't going to be able to vote in Florida?
I'm just saying, everything we just read too, I mean, you think we would have the technology to at least stop or decrease the insanity of this hurricane.
What about if we aren't the ones running the technology? What about if it's the Chinese and not Blackstone, right?
Look, it could be Chinese. I mean, they did just have that weather balloon, hovering across the U.S. months back. So the thing is, this is true. This is reality. There is technology that can manipulate or at least moderate the weather to be a certain way. Just how I just said with Vietnam, what they did with Operation Popeye. China in the 2008 Olympics, they didn't want rain for the ceremony. They used their technology to make sure that the rain was held back. So it is there. So it's just going to be led to believe that It's just too coincidental that we just got whacked with a giant once in a lifetime hurricane with the flooding it did in Appalachia, and now a once in a lifetime hurricane with this kind of trajectory. Freaking Ron DeSantis must be just like up to his neck at this point.
Thank God we have Ron DeSantis,
Thank
a
God,
real
yeah,
leader.
because he's a competent governor who's ready to lead this. But when you can't have FEMA actually helping you out and doing its job, you have to be led to believe this is by a design to just totally handicap us.
I want to read some comments on that last thing. So bringing you back, I know we're jumping back and forth between Milton and Helene, but let me read you some of the comments that went based on this ballot thing I just told you about North Carolina. Guy says, now we know why FEMA was trying to block recovery efforts. Guy responds, they'll call you a conspiracy theorist for this, but I can't think of a better explanation for why the federal government is shuffling its feet to help these people. 30 days. This is Juanita Broderick. She was the one who claims that Clinton raped her. 30 days. It's imperative that this is addressed immediately. Another response. Whether you like it or not, this disaster will impact the election. The question is, by how much and or in what direction? An argument could be made that people in neighboring counties will be furious at the government's lack of help and vote for Trump over Kamala, not voting. So, you can make an argument that says that people who would vote for Trump won't vote for Trump because they can't get there.
Yeah.
Then you could have the other argument that says people are going to be so turned off by how it is that they let people die that they'll vote for Trump what they were going to do, Kamala. This is where I come back and say to you that the lefty media and the lefty Washington, D.C. wants you to think that it's misinformation and disinformation that people aren't getting the help that they need. Kamala goes on and says, oh, everybody's saying thank you, but you can't find a single video anywhere of anybody saying thank you. I have not seen one FEMA rescue in 10 days.
I want to ask you a question too. There was just a clip, and we don't have it, but a few days back, or maybe last week, where Mayorkas was being interviewed about the response with Helene. And he, in almost everything he does, skipped on the answer or giving a real answer and said that we have been warning about extreme weather events for a while and people need to prepare accordingly. And I think his reference there was to climate change. So my question is, if him and a lot of leftists and liberals have made this giant agenda for so long about we have unstoppable climate change coming and it's going to devastate this earth, and to the point where you maybe shouldn't have kids because of it, how is it that they can tout that message and yet we know that first world nations such as us and even China or Saudi Arabia have the technology to literally modify the weather?
So what would your question be to me?
Is it that maybe climate change is not only a hoax, but it's a hoax in tandem with the fact that they can change the weather and blame it on climate change?
Okay, so it's amazing that you're saying this to me right now because I thought about this on the drive over here. This is a little bit expansive. Take away the election stuff for 1 second, although I do want to get back to that. The people who want one world order, they need there to be a global problem. It has to be, if you don't have a global problem, you can't have a global solution. They have tried so many different things over the course of time to create that one global problem. The last one they did was COVID. They were trying to create COVID into such a way that we all had to take a vaccine. And what wound up happening is we all caught on to it. Some of us caught on to it from day one, like me, who didn't take the vaccine. But everybody sort of wanted this one world. We're going to follow underneath the WHO on how it is, the one world leaders on how everybody has to come together to stop this big bad virus. It didn't work. And the next time they try another pandemic, it's not going to work because nobody's going to have faith. Everybody's going to question. So what do you need to do? They have been trying for climate change since I've been a kid. It used to be called global warming. Then they went to the new thing of climate change. So what winds up happening is that you have these massive disasters. And eventually, what winds up happening, and this is why I totally believe China is involved in this, You wind up having worldly disasters in the name of climate change, and all the nations, the leftists, because there's barely any rightists left, all the leftists come together and create a new set of rules that the world needs to follow, because if it doesn't follow these rules, we're all going to die. And therefore, you won't be able to have your SUV, and all those cars will be gone, and the jetliners will be gone, except for the people who have to fly around and warn of climate change. They're allowed to have all that stuff. And then they'll dictate every part of your life. You won't be able to do certain things. You run your air conditioner and you run your AC above, or I should say below 73 degrees, which you come into my house. If it's on 73 degrees, you can't breathe in our house, right? Just the way our house is and where it's located, and the sun hits the back of all the windows. We got our AC on 69. And even sometimes when it's on 69, we're like, my God, it's so hot in here, because the sun is hitting our window-based backyard. If we did that, if we put it on 69 degrees to make ourselves comfortable, they're going to come and arrest me, because my climate control in my house is going to be monitored by an outside agency. And in the same way that I used to be able to put down my 69 to 68 to 67, I won't be able to, because now it will be locked and I won't be able to get it past a certain thing. And if I try to do something to manipulate it, they're going to come and arrest me. It's the same way now, in the same way that you've got cameras at all your red light, green lights. And if you blow it, you wind up getting a ticket. Well, now everything you do is going to be watched. And that's how they wound up creating a one world order. And so when I look at something like this, I say, this is bullshit. There's got to be something bigger. And I am so far away from a conspiracy theorist kind of guy.
Well, no, look, I mean, right, the Wright brothers, they started off with a little plane that took off for 30 seconds, lands. Now look at where we are today. You know, you could fly the freaking, megaton planes and helicarriers. Look at cell phones. It used to be a little flip phone that you can only call certain numbers. Now we have the world in the palm of our hands. These are technologies that get developed and evolve over time. I mean, there might be cases where they try to manipulate and it fails. I mean, maybe something happened with Hurricane Sandy there. So conveniently, there's never really a big storm that takes Washington, D.C. But overall, when you have these technologies and you have a dishonest government, I think it's natural that your mindset just immediately goes to the fact, okay, we have this giant storm coming, and we have our Secretary of Homeland Security saying that the FEMA agency no longer has funds to protect us or help us afterwards. I mean, that has to be the biggest slap in the face. I mean, we have this giant hurricane coming, and like I just mentioned, DeSantis is on the ground and he's got the state behind him. But when it comes to the federal government response, you have to be led to believe it's almost purposeful how much they're trying. I mean, they're taking up the hotel rooms. They're blocking people from helping others in the mountains from Helene. I mean, they're doing every step you would take to be incompetent.
And they're taking every step you could possibly take to make sure that Donald J. Trump does not win the election. I was trying to find this because I just wanted to hold it up to the monitor so people can see it for themselves. But you just have to believe me. There is a trending tweet right now with a picture that shows this weekend we've got people in North Carolina who the death toll in this thing is going to go well over 500. There's still people missing. Mayorkas, DHS, which is responsible for this, was out shopping this weekend at a place called Sid Marshburn in Washington, D.C., where belts cost $150. This is what they're doing. There's no sense of seriousness. There's no sense of, we've got to get people saved. Nothing. And when you look at the amount of energy that our government gives to the people of Ukraine, and then what are we doing about our people? Nothing. Zero. Now to pour gasoline onto this fire, Ryan right now is going to play a video. The director of FEMA gets on with George Stephanopoulos and complains that the FEMA employees are the victims. Play it, Ryan.
So much is going viral online as well. One user suggested yesterday that a militia should go against FEMA. It got more than 500,000 views. What kind of impact has this had on the recovery effort?
It has a tremendous impact on the comfort level of our own employees to be able to go out there, but it's also demoralizing to all of the first responders that have been out there in their communities helping people, FEMA staff, volunteers, the private sector that are working side by side with local officials to go out and help people. I need to make sure I can get the resources to where they're needed. And when you have this dangerous rhetoric like you're hearing, it creates fear in our own employees. And we need to make sure we're getting help to the people who need it.
Creates fear? Let me be very point blank in something.
Oh, wow.
I don't want anybody in a rescue team to be somebody who is fearing what somebody writes. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Remember that saying that you were told to say when you went to school? They're the victims. Let me be very, very clear about something that there should be no mistake on at all. We live in an age where everything is videoed. You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything without being videoed somehow, some way. Between the Ring cameras that are on people's homes, to the cameras that are all over the place in every shopping center, to these little things called a phone, everything's recorded. You do anything, you help somebody fix their flat tire, you can be like, hey, DML coming to you here, I'm live on Facebook, I just fixed Tony's tire, ain't I great? Share, 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 share. There ain't one single freaking video of anybody from FEMA, anybody who is a person trying to survive. Not one single video. If there is, please send it to us. We'll apologize. Of somebody saving somebody.
Yeah.
Not one FEMA person saving somebody. And this woman's going to get up and make it sound like she's the victim? Kamala Harris is offering $750 freaking whopping dollars to the people who have lost everything in their life. $750.
There's an expression, it might be a little more new term. It's called, we've lost the plot. And what I mean by that is we have Americans literally suffering right now, to your point, where they're stuck in a mountain or they just lost their home. I just was watching the Fox Weather earlier about someone who lost his family farm after 30 years. You know, these are people like just gone, all of that. And then who knows what's going to happen here.
What, in Florida? This is going to be devastating.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Is like, so what I mean by lost the plot is unless you have your fellow American, you know, who's looking out for you, you got the FEMA lady complaining. You got even Lindsey Graham going on Sean Hannity and, you know, his own state being ravaged. And I'm all for Israel protecting itself and defending itself, especially with what they have to deal with. But immediately he's like, I feel for South Carolina, but we really got to focus on what's going on in Israel. I'm like, who is going to care about any of that right now when they just lost their farm or their family member, or a tragic interview about the woman who just lost her son when the storm surge came through and the floods? I mean, we're supposed to be helping our people and showing the rest of the world, hey, when we get hit with a disaster, this is what we're capable of. And all we're showing them, truthfully, is that we don't really give a shit about ourselves. And that's sad. And that is really sad. And I'm not. And when this hits, when Milton hits Florida, and we got Mayorkas, you know, after he buys his cheap suit and tie, going on ABC News saying, "Oh, we're out of FEMA funding." It's just, I think it's just going to break people's souls in a way that I'm not sure how to describe.
20 minutes ago, the National Hurricane Service put out an advisory number 10 saying Milton continuing to rapidly intensify, forecast to become a Category 5 hurricane. And then they put out another one. This one basically says damaging hurricane force winds are expected across portions of the northern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. A life-threatening storm surge with damaging waves is also likely along portions of the northern coast of the peninsula. There is an increasing risk of life-threatening storm surge and damaging winds for portions of the west coast of Florida Peninsula beginning Tuesday night and early Wednesday. Storm surge and hurricane watches are now in effect for portions of the west coast of Florida Peninsula, and residents in that area should follow any advice given by local officials and evacuate if told to do so. Areas of heavy rainfall will impact portions of Florida today, well ahead of Milton. with heavy rainfall more directly related to the system expected later on Tuesday through Wednesday night. This rainfall will bring the risk of considerable flash, urban, and aerial flooding, along with potential for moderate to major river flooding. Now, we still have in Florida, there's a place called Madeira Beach on the
Madeira
West
Beach,
Coast.
yeah.
And the sand from the last hurricane just 10 days ago is still all over the place. They haven't even dug out from the last one, and now this one's going to come. You can guarantee that we are going to have a colossal number of deaths because really, I mean, look, we have friends, Team DML. We got 2 Team DML members who have become very good friends of mine. Nancy and Jeff live in Tampa. They called me and said, can we come to your house? So I said, of course you can. So now they're coming to our house to stay with us. And then he just texted me last night. He says, Dennis, it looks like you guys are in the range of it as well. So it's like, I said to him, I said, yeah, you're going from a train wreck to a car wreck.
Yeah.
You know? And so, and where's FEMA going to be? They're going to be nowhere. Am I going to sit around and wait for FEMA? This is insanity. We want to play a video right now. Ryan has it. What is this, Ryan? Is this a rescue worker? There's a rescue worker. So it's a rescue worker who's complaining about FEMA? Yes? Play the video.
Are they still not there anywhere? What are you seeing from FEMA in the federal response, if any?
I mean, they're present. They're in the way. They are directly interrupting our ability to conduct missions and operations. And I'm not going to disparage anybody because we are trying to work within partner relationships, both government and non-government entities within state and federal and county. I went to put a couple of people into a hotel last night, and they have a security guard at the hotel. And they said, "Oh, we're so sorry. The entire hotel has been booked for federal employees." And I was like, no, I have people that would just pull it out of a mountain that are living out in the hills, and there's not a place for me to put them because we have federal employees that are staying in the hotel. I slept in this white car last night. I smell like foot and death right now, as does every single person on our team. Not a single one of us slept. We got done maybe at 3 o'clock the moment the sun was up and we could fly helicopters again. We were back in the air and we have not stopped. And I was like on the fence about trying to get on this program or not. I want people to understand how incredible this organization is, Save Our Allies, and all the work that all of these volunteers are doing. But people, this is biblical level devastation. This is apocalyptic, the things that we see out there.
These are towns up in the mountains that are 10, 20, 40 miles away from any other town. And people on the ground like you need helicopters from the government, and they will not release them. I have heard that time and again. And the people who are delivering aid up in the mountains are now getting requests for body bags. Tim, we got to run.
You are 100% correct. Oh, you're right about that. And there was a no-fly when the president flew in today. We had to land helicopters to not go rescue people so a photo op could take place. And that's a travesty, and that's unconscionable.
If people want to donate, is it SaveOurAllies.com?
That's right. And if somebody is stuck somewhere, or you know somebody that's stuck, you can go to SaveOurAllies.org, and you can click on there. Let us know. We have people going all over in the places that can't be reached. That's why we have special operations people working with partnerships to get into those areas. So go there, support that organization, and also let us know where to go.
Tim Kennedy, you are a great American. Thank you. And I know all of.
So I have a question for you. I think people have become so used to these last 4 years seeing incompetence that they just need a reminder of what competent leadership would look like.
Yeah.
Most of our viewers know if you were president, how you would handle the southern border and immigration. Let's just say you were in the role right now. Let's just say if there was some weather manipulation, it was a foreign adversary like China. But if you were currently president right now and you just had a hurricane wipe out Appalachia and then one coming directly into Florida, what would be either a step-by-step plan or a general plan that you would implement or utilize to help people out or get things under control?
Well, I guess I would take a 3-prong approach. First of all is I would not rely on the federal. If I'm a new president and I've only just been in there for a short period of time, I recognize the fact that I've got a real damaged Washington, D.C. I am going to rely on private contractors as much as I possibly can. And I am not going to spend a frickin' dollar on any other nation at all. Right now, we're paying the salaries of people in Ukraine. rescue workers and first responders. We're paying their salaries, okay? So that ends immediately. Nobody would ever worry about having to have money for things that we need to rebuild or save lives. Or I mean, my God, you guys just went over the weekend with mommy to the store. You couldn't find anything. I mean, we have local people here. We have a local thing on Facebook where people are saying, does anybody know where I can go and buy water?
Yeah.
I mean, people can't buy basic water right now. And I'm just looking at it because if we do get hit on our side, I just counted up. We've got like 6 cases of water. There's 6 of us. There's going to be 8 of us with Nancy and Jeff coming. And I'm like, shit, how long until we get more water in here? We didn't prepare enough.
Well,
You know
this
what I
thing
mean?
came so quick.
Yeah. So that's number one. So I'm going to rely on private contractors more than I am the federal government. That's number one. Number two, I always believe that the way that you could be the greatest leader is you never, ever make it so this way you're the smartest person in the room. If you're the smartest person in the room, you got yourself a problem. So I would absolutely go into Ron DeSantis and I'd say, listen to me. I saw the way you handled hurricanes in Florida. What do we need to do? Tell me what we need to do. You're the guy who did it the best, and that's what we do. So I would look to those people who I know I could trust, who had the best. As far as my adversaries around the world, we wouldn't be in this spot if you have guys like me. I would be on that phone, and I would be telling Xi Jinping and whoever else, you know, my intelligence says that are the ones we've got to worry about with this shit. And I'd tell them, you know what? I'm going to eventually find out if this is you. And if this is you, I'm going to have you for dinner. I'm going to have Chinese food for dinner because we're going to chop you up and serve you on rice, baby. So if you have the buttons that can slow this thing down and technology down, you better touch the button now. Otherwise, I'm not kidding. I'm going to use everything I possibly have against you, and your days are over. The reason why the United States is suffering right now, no matter what you're talking about, no matter what end, is because we have become, and I'm going to use some profanity here, so people better get ready. We have become a country filled with pussies. Seriously, we have pussified this country. Okay? People need safe spaces. They need their extra little pillow. They need their squeeze ball to get rid of their stress. Are you shitting me? We had guys who were storming the beach knowing they were going to take a bullet in the head. This is what we become to? Oh, we can't say the Pledge of Allegiance. It's going to be offensive to somebody. Oh, my ass. The beatings that people need. I mean, seriously. And the problem is the beatings always come to the people who don't need them, like the good people of North Carolina who are living up in those hills. You know, they're not the ones who need it. They didn't need the beating. They didn't need to learn the lesson, you know, the value of what I've got. These people are the hardworking people. These are the people who are America. And they're basically being stranded by the federal government. You vote for Kamala Harris, you are beyond an asshole. Mm-hmm. Okay? It really comes down to that. So you ask me what I would do. I mean, you know, there used to be a saying, Dennis, you can't control the weather. I mean, I guess that's voodoo. So I'm going to find out if this is indeed being controlled. I'm going to find out who's going to control it. And I am going to drive a truck up their asshole because that's what's going to happen. And we'll never deal with this again. And if people don't like that sort of aggressive behavior, listen, I'm never aggressive when it really comes to physical. You know it. I'll be as loud as they come. I could intimidate with my voice alone. But I'm telling you, in this particular case here, we're watching American people die. We're giving our money and our resources to other areas. And the mainstream media is sitting up there like George Stephanopoulos is sitting up there and saying, what does this feel like for FEMA employees? Who gives a rat's ass? Have you seen some of these FEMA employees? They can't wipe their own ass. Seriously, they can't reach around and wipe their own ass. These people are going to climb a mountain and save Mr. and Mrs. Jones, who basically haven't eaten in 10 days? Come on. They're walking around with clipboards. Have you seen them? This is what they fucking look like in North Carolina, FEMA. Okay, if you just sign your name here, we could get you $750. Well, I'm sorry, can you tell me all the things you had that you lost? Get the fuck out of my way.
Get some trucks up there, get some helicopters up there, get some men with some balls, and let's start rescuing people. And if you're the sheriff, and I've heard that the sheriff has done this, and a federal employee gets in your way, fucking knock him over. That's it. This is, you're fighting for your life. This isn't one of these things where, oh, we got to be politically correct. Move out of the way.
Or even get, freaking booty juice over there saying like, oh, hey, we need the airspace clear. That's why we're threatening, a man and his son going in a helicopter and rescuing people. But what's the point of having a clear airspace if you're not even flying anyone on your side to go help? It's fucking,
it's such
ridiculous.
A bullshit narrative. Yeah. You know what it is? On top of that, let's remember something. North Carolina has a liberal governor.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, North Carolina is riddled with blueness, the disease. That's another reason why you look at this whole thing. They want to take out Florida. Florida is the only place to go in America. It is point blank the only place to go. Some people will argue Texas. My ass. You got Mexico next to you. Texas. You go into Texas, half of Texas looks like Mexico. Acts like Mexico. It's turning blue. People like Ted Cruz are struggling to win elections. Ron DeSantis is winning by 20 points. All right. So the great way, one thing we talked about this morning, I was talking about with this buddy of mine this morning. He read in the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal said the migration to Florida has stopped. Why? Because people have seen two things happening in Florida. One, these extreme weather conditions are starting to rip out towns. I mean, look at this. 10 days later, you're like, oh, we finally got our power back, only to lose it again in another 24 hours. People don't want to live like that. Number two is because we've had so many people come here, the cost of everything has gone crazy. I mean, one of the reasons why I left New York to come to Florida, although lower on the scale than the political reasons, is because it costs less money. I don't have to pay state tax, right? My property tax. I had a 100 by 100 piece of property, a little postage stamp that most people in America have. We pay, I didn't live on the water. It was a nice home, but nothing crazy. $26,000 a year was my property tax. I got out of that. I live on the water now. I live on the Intercoastal now in a house that's 10 times prettier than that, and I pay the same dollar amount. So when you look at why people are going to Florida or why they weren't, this sort of thing stops the migration. Because if Kamala Harris, some guy just asked me about the podcast. I said, listen, I can't give you what my future looks like because I can't tell you who's going to win the election. If Kamala Harris wins, my entire life changes. The life of my boys change. Everything changes. Kamala Harris, if she wins, what did I tell you? I've said it forever. If Kamala Harris wins this election, Florida is going to become a sardine can because everybody's going to want to go to the one place where you feel freedom. I mean, America has been a complete shitstorm, shithole for the past basic 4 years. Where have we been for the last 4 years? In Florida. I'd be the first one to tell you, I have not felt what other people in this country have felt because I'm living in the freedom of Florida. Now, if this thing hits the way they say it's going to hit, the whole west coast of Florida is going to wind up being underwater. You're talking about storm surges of 12, 15, 20 feet in areas that are so heavily populated. And even on our side, on the East Coast, the storm surge we have, because the water where our house is positioned, the water is going to be coming into my backyard. It's going to be going from west to east, and my house faces east. We get the beautiful sunset every night. That water is going to be coming up on my house, and we already talked about it because the boys, you go full screen, get Denny in here, Ryan. The boys and Ashley have condos that are inland. I'm not too concerned about water for you guys. But you're inland.
Because where the water would be going, it's not going to be going in the direction of where our condo
It's not coming from the ocean in. It's going from the lakes out, right? So I live on the Intercoastal. I'm going to get hit. You guys will be dry. And your mother already asked me. She said, what are we doing? Because if we get the evacuation order. I said, you guys are all going to the condos, including with Jeff and Nancy, our friends. I said, I'm staying in the fucking house. I ain't moving. And then Ryan said, I'll stay with you, Dad. And then your mother's like, he's not staying with you. I said, oh, listen, I'll stay by myself. Take it all out. I'm staying by myself, but that I'm not leaving. You know, I got my boat, I got my paddles, and if I have to, I'll paddle my way out. But I'm not going to do that because you know what happens? You know what? Look at the story. Oh my God, we could go on forever. It's an hour now. We got to wrap up. Look at the stories that we covered over the last 2 weeks since this hurricane went. We got the whole migrants looting into homes.
Yeah.
If you're a migrant or you're a thief and you're going to go try to loot, my neighborhood's one of the places you're going to go, right? Yeah. You think I'm going to let some piece of shit that shouldn't be in my country to begin with come in and steal stuff from my house? No. You're going to have a lot more to worry about than Milton. You're going to have Hurricane DML. It ain't going to happen. So, you know, this kind of stuff that's happening, Ryan, I don't know if you go close in on me. I don't know if you can see this or not, but I just found it while I was sitting here. Here's Mayorkas. Mayorkas is shopping. People are dying, being left for dead by his agency, and he's out buying $150 belts. That's what your U.S. government is. Anybody who votes for Kamala Harris, I'm serious. I will never talk to them ever again in my life. Ever again in my life. Ever again.
Yeah, look, I think to your point, look, you got your pink-haired, crazy lefty living in New York City who's probably not even blinking an eye about what's happening here, and they're a lost cause. But if you're, some moderate, independent Democrat who maybe lives somewhere in a region that's not too far from these disasters right now, and you still feel that she, meaning Kamala, is the kind of leader you want for these kind of disasters, you're crazy in the head. I think you need to freaking go get examined.
Send me one video. If you have somebody in your life who is, or just do it for yourself. I get this all the time. We got this stuff on an Ask DML the other day. All the time. What do I say to my lefty brother, my lefty mother, my lefty cousin who wants to vote for Kamala Harris? Here's where you do it right now. Ask your relative to send you just one video of anybody out of North Carolina or Georgia or anybody who has been significantly hit praising FEMA.
Yeah.
And showing FEMA did something for them. Send them the video. Challenge them that way.
I find it funny how ABC will give that FEMA official the time of day for an interview, but won't, interview anyone who maybe actually, got impacted by this damn hurricane.
Same thing when we looked at Springfield, Ohio.
They call it a town manager, but not a resident.
Yeah, they call the town manager to ask whether or not anybody had their pet taken or a bird's head ripped off, but none of the residents got a voice in that. Yeah, okay. Look, we're running long. We want to give you something really good, though. We want to end you on some good news here. Elon Musk showed up at Butler, Pennsylvania over the weekend where Trump revisited. Obviously, that's where he was shot in the head where the assassination attempt happened. Elon Musk was called up to stage, and I mean, the appearance of him jumping up and down, he looked like a 10-year-old boy whose team just won the Super Bowl. But we have a short clip here of what he had to say. Ryan's going to play it, and then we're going to sign off. Go ahead, Ryan.
Free speech is the bedrock of democracy. And if people don't know what's going on, if they don't know the truth, how can you make an informed vote? You must have free speech in order to have democracy. That's why it's the First Amendment. And the Second Amendment is there to ensure that we have the First Amendment. President Trump must win to preserve the Constitution. He must win to preserve democracy in America.
So Elon Musk is now putting out a new offer. Dennis is going to explain the offer here. Pays $47 a head. What is it, Dennis?
Yeah, so if you're an ex-user, by the way, you can go to Elon Musk's profile. It's pinned at the top of his timeline. And it says, sign our petition to support the Constitution. You can also earn $47 for every person you refer to sign the petition if they're in a swing state. The goal is to get 1 million voters in swing states to show support for free speech and the right to bear arms.
So Kamala Harris is going to try to have a last wave of media. Not that she ever had a first wave. And she's going to be appearing on Stephen Colbert, Howard Stern, and The View. So she's going on lefty, extreme lefty, and the furthest of lefty. And that's going to be where she's going to get her fair interviews, where it's all going to be about beating up on Trump, and that's all it is.
And abortion.
And abortion.
Yes.
Not one person on here is going to say anything about the recovery effort other than you guys are working around the clock, you FEMA people working around the clock? Yeah. So let me tell you what we're going to wind up doing to the best of our ability. And if I say something wrong, Dennis, intervene. Same thing with Ryan. So typically, we have our Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday schedule. Thursday, we do an Ask DML. And on Friday, I'm usually with Miss Mary here. We are going to prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Unless something goes out with the internet tomorrow, we will be with you again live tomorrow. We will do an Ask DML tomorrow, and that will play on Wednesday, simply because Wednesday is going to be when this is starting to hit. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to want to be focused more in on our home and safety of my friends and everything else like that. If it's not all that bad, clearly we'll try to come back into you on Thursday. But just keep on using the DML News app to see. That's where, if nothing else, we will give you updates on the DML News app, assuming we have any kind of connection, whether it's cell or otherwise. The other thing you could do is you could follow, there's the two of us, that you could follow us on X. We really don't use these accounts much, but my X account is x.com/trustdml. And we have one for the DML News app, which is x.com/DML News app. So you can follow those two. Also, you can follow me on Facebook. Again, this is if we have cell stuff, but we don't expect that kind of thing to happen until Wednesday or Thursday. So we'll do the best we possibly can to be with you. That's that. But as of right now, we know we will be with you tomorrow, unless some crazy way the internet is knocked out beforehand. I just don't see that happening. I think it's Tuesday night that we got to really start worrying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There might be some shipment delays too, from what I was reading with USPS. So
yeah, so we've been shipping things, not only CBD, but all the $20 and the $10 stuff or whatever it may be, maybe a couple of days behind, not only just for delivery because of the United States Postal Service, but also of us being able to get it out, which, by the way, let me just put the commercial out there. I wasn't kidding earlier today. If it wasn't for our members and it isn't for people buying stuff from us periodically, we would be out of business. We have been completely cut off from Facebook, completely cut off from Google. There's very, very few opportunities for us in an ad space anymore. It's what they're doing to conservatives, and that's it. So 3 things real quick, if you could consider it. TeamDML.com, become a member for $30 from now to the election. And then after that, it's $200 a year. So if you could get in now, that would be the smart thing to do. It helps us stay around. Number 2, although there are not many items left, I have Denny's book here. Denny book, he wrote it last year. It's called The Wild Adventures of Robert and Summer. It did great on Amazon, had a lot of members buy it. This was selling for $27, I believe, on Amazon. We are now giving up, with the few that we have left, we're giving them away for $10. Plus, we have some bumper stickers in there and stuff like that. For $10, you wind up getting this item, or one of the items you pick, and you get a free bottle of DML CBD face serum. And it's an unbelievable thing. I use it every single day for my face. Denny does as well. Mary does as well. People love it. It's one of our more popular things. We're able to do this through the DML Foundation. The DML Foundation is making it so this way we could give free bottles to people because we know a lot of people can't afford it. And if people can, like I said, you buy this, you get a free one of this. So you're getting about $85 worth of stuff for $10. So it's helping us get things out of the warehouse because we're not going to be here long term. We're going to a new place, but we don't know what that place is until after the election. Also, Team DML shirts. I don't have one here to show you, but we've been selling out of them. Team DML shirts, they're dry fit. They're a white, beautiful white with black lettering, Team DML. We have them in medium, large, and extra large. They're brand new, $25. You get it, you pick your size, and you get 2 of these for free. So another great deal. 2 of these for free. What's so funny, Denny?
I love Ron DeSantis.
Ron DeSantis, what do you do?
So in Pinellas County, there's a landfill.
Yeah.
And he had put out an order saying, like, hey, have your gates open because people still have debris from Helene, and they got to get rid of it, especially with this new one coming in. And I guess whoever operates that landfill is incompetent, as usual, and the gate was closed. So DeSantis sent in his own guys in pickup trucks, they tied up to the gate and they ripped the gate open so
Way
that
to go.
people can go bring their debris. I feel like that's something you would totally do.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying you need somebody to go in and kick ass, say, get the fuck out of the way. You're going to be a problem. You're going to be a hindrance. Get out of the way. That's the American way. That's why I say, you know what, when I sit there and make the joke about, I'm going to eat Chinese food, I am going to eat China alive if they keep on pulling bullshit like they're pulling. It's that simple. We keep negotiating and talking, and it gets us nowhere. We just keep on getting worse and worse and worse. We keep on borrowing money from China to give over to Ukraine or to give over to the Middle East. And we got people living in squalor in the United States of America. Where did this mentality come from? We just got to take back things and get them back to where they're supposed to be, teach our kids to be men and women, not little tiny pansy asses. They laugh at us all over the world. They laugh at us. And that's why I'm telling you, people like Trump, people like Ron DeSantis, I'll even put now Vance in there, people like myself, people aren't going to take any shit. We're not going to be these big, huge, mean people. I mean, the stuff that they're saying, Michael Cohen says that Trump is going to take in SEAL Team 6 to get all of his opponents if he wins. He's going to use the SEALs.
Michael Cohen said that.
Yeah, and he said he's going to change his name and move away if Trump wins.
Can you just do that anyways?
Why don't you do it now? Just use your real name.
Can we just get rid of Michael
We'll give
Cohen?
you some money. Never forget, though, Trump hired him as his lawyer. Never forget, Trump hired him as a lawyer. That's why Trump sometimes has bad judgment when it's hiring people. I hope that changes this time around.
Yeah.
Assuming we get in. So that's that. All right. So hold on, buckle down, strap in, and God willing, we'll be with you again tomorrow. That's it for, DMLCBD.com/store is where you go to get those things I was telling you about, the shirt, and DMLCBD.com/store. One of the last things I want to just say here about DMLCBD. If you're a DMLCBD customer, get prepared. Starting on Halloween, we are going to have our last site-wide Everything is BOGO. Keep in mind, we have limited inventory because we know we are going to be moving, so I have not been stocking up on a lot. So you better get ready. October 31st is going to be one of, if not the last, buy one, get one frees that we're going to have for quite some time. And if Kamala wins the presidency, which would be devastating, I don't know how we will be able to do it, if we will be able to do it. So get prepared for that. October 31st. It starts October 31st, and we're going to hold it open until everything's gone. I suspect it will be a couple of days, and that's it. So just so this way you know. All right, until the next time, may God bless you, our country, everybody who is struggling because of these hurricanes, and of course, Donald J. Trump.
And today's Team DML blessing goes out to Patricia Simone.
All right, Patricia, run with it.
Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and Team DML.